Hello and welcome to The Signal, Workplace NL's Health and Safety podcast. Workplace NL is the Workers' Compensation Board in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. The focus is to promote safe and healthy workplaces, provide return-to-work programs, and offer compensation to injured workers and their dependents. This series of podcasts will provide you with the latest information on how workplaces can protect the health and safety of workers. Please enjoy the show.
Hello, my name is Sheri Philpott. I'm an OHS educational consultant with Workplace NL, and I'm here with DeeAnne today.
Hi, everyone. My name is DeeAnne, Feltham-Scott. I'm an OHS educational consultant as well in prevention services at Workplace NL. One of the questions that Sheri and I have been, getting a lot lately is regarding workplace roles and responsibilities under legislation, how they work, how they connect, how we can all work together to keep workplaces healthy and safe, and as well as then how that all relates to due diligence. So we can start with, let's just define what due diligence is to begin with.
So due diligence is the level of judgment, care, prudence, determination, and activity that a person would reasonably be expected to do under particular circumstances. So that would be like a legal definition of it.
Yes.
To break it down a little more, it's what an employer would be reasonably expected to do to protect the health and safety of their workers.
Right, exactly. Under a particular circumstance. Right.
We can get into how that relates to our responsibilities in the workplace. First, we should probably talk a little bit about what they are.
Right.
Roles and responsibilities are applicable to everybody in the workplace. The employer, the supervisor, and the worker all have a set of roles and responsibilities and the accountabilities that go along with those as well.
Right. And it really all starts with, these roles and responsibilities, they really branch off the internal responsibility system.
Yes.
Right? And the internal responsibility system, this really is, the underlying philosophy of all occupational health and safety legislation in all Canadian jurisdictions. It really is. It builds the foundation and it lays, out the responsibilities for everybody in the workplace, starting with the employer, the supervisor, and the worker.
Yeah, so if we think about responsibilities in the workplace, we can first look at the employer. So the employer is responsible to identify workplace hazards and notify the workers and supervisors of those. They're also responsible to provide and maintain a healthy and safe workplace by planning safe work and developing safe work practices and procedures associated with the work and work processes within the workplace. And they're to provide instruction to workers in how to use, maintain, store, inspect their tools, machinery, and equipment.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the employer. I'll move on to the supervisor now. So the supervisor, they are required to understand the requirements of OHS legislation that apply to the hazards in their workplace and the job task that their workers are doing. Then they have to advise, or they have to tell the workers of what their hazards are in the workplace that they might face. Then they also have a role and a responsibility to help the employer plan safe work and to enforce the safe work practices and procedures that are associated with the work that the worker is doing. And they also have a role in providing instruction to the workers in how they use the tools, equipment, machinery, or whatever has been provided to them by the employer. So that's their role.
Yes, and then the worker would also have their own responsibilities. So the worker must report their hazards to the employer and the supervisor.
Right.
So anything that they see in the workplace, they need to report that to make sure that it can get fixed.
Right, immediately. They don't have to wait for the Health and Safety Committee or the Workplace Inspection Team to come along. They are required to report that immediately to their supervisor.
Absolutely. And the worker must also follow any safe work practices or procedures that are provided to them. And they must participate in any instruction and training sessions.
Right.
So when the employer or the supervisor provides you with work instructions, which is essentially what your safe work practices and procedures are.
Yep.
And the training that goes along with those, you must participate in that and you must follow those instructions as they set out.
Exactly. Yeah. And with responsibilities, of course, come accountabilities. And everyone is held accountable for meeting their responsibilities and the actions that they take or they don't take within their own level of authority. So what accountability really means is it's determining if individuals properly exercised their authority and if they carried out their responsibilities within that level of authority. In order to be accountable to something, you really have to have clearly defined expectations,
Right.
and of course responsibilities against which what you did or didn't do can be evaluated against. Right?
So if we take that and we relate that back to the responsibilities that we were just talking about, employers would be accountable for identifying the hazards and notifying supervisors and workers of those hazards. Supervisors would be accountable for advising the workers of the hazards.
Right.
And then workers would be accountable to report those hazards back to their supervisor or report new hazards back to their supervisor and the employer.
Right, exactly. And this is where the role of communication is really important as well, right? You have to understand your responsibilities. You have to understand your accountabilities. As a worker, if you find a hazard, you report it to your supervisor. As a supervisor employer, if you find a new hazard in the workplace, it's your responsibility to tell your worker.
Right.
And your workers, I should say. And to communicate that in a way that works for everyone in the workplace, right? We don't want to get in to the situation where people are saying, well, so-and-so didn't tell me that.
Right.
You know, like we all have a role to play.
Yeah, and just a quick little tidbit, I guess, while we're talking about communication. When we say to use appropriate means for everybody in the workplace, an example of that would be like if you've got a workforce that is mainly like on the tools, they're in the field, they're working with their hands.
Right.
They're not at a computer all day long. You wouldn't email them about this hazard. You would actually have to go and tell them or hold a meeting or something along those lines. You wouldn't be like, it's not reasonably expected for a worker to be checking their email when they're out in the field like that.
That's right. And many of them, I mean, like you said, many of them aren't going to be checking their emails, right? Yeah. So another thing as well that the IRS gives us, which is the internal responsibility, is that it gives us our 3 basic rights. It's important to note, too, that, even though a supervisor does have specific supervision responsibilities under the legislation, a supervisor is also considered to be a worker when it comes to the workers' rights.
Absolutely.
Right? So the 3 rights are that we all have the right to know. We have the right to know about any of the workplace hazards that we're going to face in the workplace. We also have the right to participate.
Yes.
A lot of people use the example of the Occupational Health and Safety committees, which is a great example of participation. But I know myself, and I've heard Sheri say as well, that, participation always comes back as well to the employer's responsibility to consult with workers.
Yes.
When you're consulting with your workers, then you're also asking them to participate in any decisions that are being made on the best ways to protect their health and safety in the workplace.
as well as health and safety activities in the workplace. So like workplace inspections or hazard assessments.
Right. Safe work practices and procedures.
Right.
That is the opportunity to consult with your workers and to get them involved and participate in developing a safe work practice and procedure that is going to be the most efficient and the safest method for them to do their work.
Yes.
Yeah. And then our last right is we all have the right to refuse work under reasonable grounds, of course, that we believe is dangerous to our own health and safety or the health and safety of somebody else that's in the workplace.
Yeah.
Right? We all have that right. Yeah. So, and why is due diligence so important?
Well, I guess I like to think of it like due diligence is like a mechanism for employers to hold themselves accountable. It's a way to track, to make sure that they are doing all the things that they need to do within the workplace.
Right.
And it's a way to, should something happen,
Yes.
they have a way to, I guess, present that, yes, I have done all the things that was expected of me to do.
Exactly. So that also brings us to a really important point.
Mm-hmm.
You have to write things down.
Absolutely.
Right? Like if you don't write anything down, how can you show that you actually done it?
A good way to think of it is if it's not on paper, it didn't happen.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So you can't say you did a workplace inspection if you don't have the document that proves that you did that workplace
For
inspection.
sure. Yeah. And any documentation that you're keeping, you have to show that it's clear, it's appropriate, and it's frequent. And that really shows then, as an employer, as part of your OSH responsibilities, that you have developed, I'm going to say, like a systematic approach to managing the health and safety risks in your workplace.
Right.
Yeah. I guess before we finish off, the commitment to
Yes.
creating this workplace is paramount, really. You
Absolutely.
need to have that commitment from your leaders. And, and we're talking about documentation, and documentation is important, but it just can't be a commitment in writing. It has to
No.
be a commitment
In practice.
in practice and shown through the actions that you're taking
Absolutely.
in the workplace.
It's not good enough to just write on paper that you did something. You actually have to implement it. You actually
Right.
have to make sure that it's happening.
Right.
So when we talk about, like, let's say your hazard recognition and evaluation and control program,
Yeah.
it's a good thing to have it on paper, but you also need to be able to express it in the workplace as well.
Exactly. Yeah. You really have to get involved, and you have to stay involved, right? And when you get involved as well as an employer, as a supervisor, that provides you and your workforce with that opportunity to really understand what each other's responsibilities and roles are
Right.
in the workplace. You really need to get in there, and you need to get involved. One of the things that we say, and I know I've said several times in a lot of presentations that I've done, is that as a manager, as an employer, you really have to lead the way, and you have to be a positive role model in the workplace. And it's important that you create this culture where, working in a healthy and safe manner is just a part of the job, and it's just how you do it
Absolutely.
in your workplace.
It's important to note that health and safety is not a one-time activity. It's something that is a continuous process. It happens all day, every day. It requires teamwork and organization, and it's part of the job. Like you said, it's part of the work process. It's part of the job. It's something that happens
Yep.
all the time.
Yep. And, I guess getting back and, to our discussion about roles and responsibilities, and, kind of cluing up now the end of this episode. But, we have those roles and responsibilities, but depending on what's going on in the workplace, your
Right.
roles and responsibilities might change a little bit.
Absolutely.
So this gets back to the role of communication again. So we do have those legislative responsibilities that will remain the same. But depending on what's going on in our workplace, how you do them might change a little bit as well.
Absolutely. So like an example of that, I guess, would be with COVID, how everybody went to working from home.
Oh yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah.
The employer and the supervisor still have the same responsibilities when it comes to protecting their workers, but they have to go about it in different ways because the worker is no longer physically within their workplace.
That's right. That's a really good example. I like that example. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today.
If you guys have any questions about responsibilities with health and safety or health and safety in general, you can reach out to us here at Workplace NL. An easy way to get us would be to email safety@workplacenl.ca.
Or you can call 778-2926, and they will put you in touch with either myself or Sheri. Have a safe and healthy day, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. Transcripts are available to use in your workplace to increase workers' knowledge in various occupational health and safety topics. Visit workplacenl.ca for more information on the services we provide to workplaces. Feel free to share the signal on social media to improve workplace health and safety everywhere. Thank you and have a safe and healthy day.